So our third strategy for factoring is factor by grouping. So we're going to do this problem right here. 5x cubed plus 10x squared plus 3x plus 6. So notice this one's different because instead of a trinomial, now we just have a polynomial, one that has 4 terms instead of 3 terms. So because this one has 4 terms, I'm going to factor by grouping. I'm going to split this into 2 parts. Now, when you factor by grouping, after you split it into 2 parts, you always keep the sign between those 2 parts. So I'm going to look at these parts individually. What is something that both of these have in common? I'm going to find the GCF, and they both have a 5x squared in common. So I'm going to do reverse distributive and pull the 5x squared on the outside, and then inside the parenthesis, I'm going to write what's left. So it'll be x plus 2. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Look for a GCF. What do they both have in common? A 3. And what's left is x plus 2. Now I'm down to 2 terms. I have a term here and a term here. With those 2 terms, I'm going to factor by grouping again because, or I'm going to find a GCF again because, look, I have a GCF out of both of those terms. So I'm going to do the reverse distributive property. I'm going to bring this x plus 2 out to the front. So I brought this x plus 2 out, this x plus 2 out. So then I'm going to write in parentheses what's left. What do I take times x plus 2 to get this? 5x squared. What do I take times x plus 2? That would give me this, and it would be positive 3. So that's the way we can factor a 4-term polynomial into 2 binomials. Let's do another one. 30x cubed plus 40x squared minus 21x minus 28. So 4 terms here, I'm going to factor by grouping. I'm going to look at this group and this group. And remember, we always keep the sign in between the 2 groups, so it's going to be a minus right there. So amongst this group, I have to see what they have in common. They have a 10 in common and an x squared in common. So then I'm going to write what's left. What do you take times 10x squared to get 30x cubed? A 3x. What do you take times 10x squared to get 40x squared? Plus 4. Over here, what do they have in common? A 7. Now, notice on this one, I've pulled out a 7, but it's really negative 7. So when I think about what I have to put in here, I have to think negative 7 times what gives me negative 21x. And that would be a positive 3x. And negative 7 times what gives me negative 28, that's plus 4. This is good. What should happen if it factors is these numbers should be the same. Because now I have a GCF of 3x plus 4 that I can bring out and do the reverse distributive, factor it out, and then write in the parenthesis right next to it what's left. 10x squared minus 7. So I'll have kids ask me typically at this point then, what happens if these aren't the same? Well, first, I would go back and check to make sure I haven't made a mistake with the positive or negative or that I pulled out a GCF. And then after I do that, I would just know, well, this one doesn't factor if they don't have a common factor. All right, let me do one more with you. I'm actually going to do 2 more. But what I'd like for you to do on this one is pause the video, try this yourself, then unpause the video and see how I did the problem. All right, hopefully you tried this yourself. So I'm going to factor by grouping because there's 4 terms. So I'm going to pull out something they have in common. They have a 3 in common, and they have an x squared in common. So what's left is 4x plus 5. I'm going to keep this sign. And then if you'll notice on this side, there's nothing that they have in common. So when there's nothing that they have in common, I still have to pull something out, and that something is going to be a 1. And then what I have left is 4x plus 5. So here, now I'm looking to factor by grouping, so I'm going to look for a common term, 4x plus 5. And then I'm going to write 3x plus 1, or 3x squared plus 1, because that's what would be left. Notice I have to have this 1 here, because each of these terms would have to go times the 1 to give me what I started with. So you'll need that. Do one more. Again, why don't you copy this one down as I'm writing it, and then you try it. So try this one. X to the third plus 7x squared minus 4x minus 28. Pause the video, try it yourself. All right, let's try it. So I'm going to look to see here what they have in common. They have an x squared, and what's left is x plus 7. I'm going to bring down the symbol in between and factor out a common factor here of 4. So negative 4 times what? It'd be x. Negative 4 times what gives me negative 28? It'd be plus 7. So what happens now is I have a GCF of x plus 7. So what's left is x squared minus 4. We're going to learn later that this will actually factor again. We just have not gotten there in our lessons yet.